The Health Policy Toolkit is an easy-to-use online tool developed by the IFC World Bank Group and partners to help policymakers and practitioners better engage with the private health sector. It was informed by 2 surveys of policymakers and private sector providers conducted during engagement activities in Mombasa, Kenya, and Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso in 2010. The World Bank Group collaborated with several organizations in developing this health policy toolkit, including the U.S. Agency for International Development project entitled Strengthening Health Outcomes Through the Private Sector, or SHOPS, the University of California at San Francisco, Results for Development, and the Rockefeller Foundation. The goal of the Health Policy Toolkit is to bring together in one location resources on engaging the private health sector to improve health outcomes. Tools include PowerPoint presentations, case studies, subject-specific toolkits, training materials, videos, reports, and journal articles. This toolkit is divided into 3 distinct categories, which are the pillars of engagement with the private health sector. That is assessment, engagement, and capacity development. These are focused on helping policymakers, practitioners, those working with policymakers better understand how to assess, engage, and develop capacity with the private health sector. These pillars of stewardship overlap and are mutually reinforcing. The Health Policy Toolkit is comprised of 4 modules. Module 1 is Fundamentals, Module 2 is Assessment, Module 3 Engagement, and Module 4 Capacity Development. In the Fundamentals module, we set the stage, defining key terms such as the health system, stewardship and engagement, and the policy cycle, and we discuss the engagement continuum. Here we see a typical screen. This is about the health system. We have a definition up at the top. We have a graphic with an explanation down at the bottom, and then we have key resources on the right. At any time you can go into any of the other modules by clicking on the left. The pull-down menu up here shows you each step and sub-step in each module. Next, we discuss the private health sector. What is the private health sector? What is the health market? Why does it matter? Who uses the private health sector and why? And what types of collaboration are possible with the private health sector? In the Fundamentals module, we touch briefly on each of the stewardship instruments, which are discussed in more detail in the capacity development section. The instruments discussed in the toolkit are accreditation, contracting, information flow to consumers, information flow to providers, regulation, social franchising, social marketing, and vouchers. In the assessment module, Module 2, we learn about how stakeholders can understand how to better engage the public and private sectors through the results of an assessment process. We discuss the health system, the health market, and then we turn to the big picture issue of what is a private health system assessment, and we define a private health sector assessment, its objectives, and expected outcomes. We look at the focus of private health sector assessments. We look at a log frame for private health sector assessments based on areas, inputs, processes, outputs, outcomes, and impacts. Then we turn to the types of private health sector assessments, which we go into more detail within this section. Descriptive, analytical, and predictive models. We provide examples of different assessments that are descriptive, analytical, and predictive, and we give tips on when to use different types of models. We then provide a summary approach to the assessment process that looks at how to blend these different approaches and better understand how to conduct assessments. We look at data collection. Here is the view of secondary data sources by type of data, and then we look at different sources online by organization of information for desk research for private health sector assessment. We also address primary data collection methods by category, method, definition, and advantages and disadvantages of each. We look at focus groups and other types of primary data collection methods. Next, we turn to assessment considerations, the scope, the first steps, and then key assessment themes, and defining the terms of reference with examples of different terms of reference that the World Bank has used, so that can be adapted to country contexts. The final section in this module is looking at how to conduct a private health sector assessment. Module 3, the engagement module, is based on the Public-Private Dialogue Handbook and a forthcoming document entitled Assessment to Action, a Guide to Understand, Analyze, and Leverage the Private Sector's Contribution to Health by O'Hanlon et al. Of Abt Associates and Shops. The engagement module is based on the policy cycle, which begins with diagnosing the private health sector, then proceeds to designing and implementing a public-private dialogue, or PPD, and concludes with a review of monitoring and evaluation strategies. Other equally valid methods are highlighted, including the SHOPS model and the World Bank Institute model of engagement. Each part of the policy cycle is then explained in turn. Here we see the diagnostic project sequence, stakeholder analysis, designing a public-private dialogue process, including structure, what you see here, champions, the role of a facilitator, outputs, and additional considerations. In implementation, we learn about designing a public-private dialogue action plan, as well as a public-private dialogue communications plan. The final section of the engagement module looks at monitoring and evaluations, the focus, challenges in conducting a PPD monitoring and evaluation, developing a plan to monitor progress in a PPD. We look at M&E tools, and then look briefly at what is an indicator and what are some elements to consider when developing indicators for a PPD process. The fourth and final module in the Health Policy Toolkit is the Capacity Development module, which was informed by the World Bank Institute's training courses on private health sector policy and public-private collaboration conducted over the last 8 years. Here we see a sample agenda for a workshop on strengthening private health policy to achieve health goals, which can be easily adapted by audience and country. This module uses the analytical framework shown here, linking a country's goals or problems to the opportunities which may exist to mobilize the private sector. The framework asks, what are the primary goals? Who are the private sector actors? How are they relevant? How are they organized? What strategies would work best for your situation? Which parts of the private health sector are most relevant? And which policy instruments are most likely to encourage the private health sector to contribute to health system goals? We highlight 4 strategies for engaging the private health sector, that is, harnessing, growing, converting, or restricting the private health sector. Next, we talk about policy instruments, which we have briefly explored in other sections of the toolkit. The difference in this section is that there is more detail for each of the different policy instruments. Here we look at regulation. You can see we talk about what is regulation, benefits and costs, who regulates healthcare, self-regulation by professional health bodies, and accreditation. Contracting and vouchers, social marketing, and social franchising are all discussed in the capacity development section with additional toolkits, videos, and reports pertinent to each issue. That concludes the Health Policy Toolkit overview. We hope that you check back often to learn more about how the private health sector can contribute to health system goals.